Good evening and welcome. This is the best in paranormal talk radio. Beyond the Darkness is on the air. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, along with me, Tim Dennis. Tim, over the years, we've hit on some topics that just seem to take on a life of their own. Mm-hmm. When we talked about black-eyed kids, definitely one of them.
Oh, yes.
Right? Alien abductions and some of the stranger conspiracy theories. But one of the stories that kind of transcends into the paranormal and conspiratorial is this Mandela effect. We did an episode on it a number of years ago. We called it Who Brought Kirk Douglas Back from the Dead? Mm-hmm. And we talked about this aspect that I had a very vivid memory of Kirk Douglas dying. And I understand he had a stroke, but it was shortly after then that he suffered a massive heart attack and died. Right. I remember it concisely. I remember the interviews afterwards. I remember Entertainment Tonight playing the retrospective videos. And I remember Michael Douglas talking about it. Mm-hmm. And I was astounded at how many people remember the exact same thing. And they'll even go, and I remember this, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, that's the one part of the story I didn't even mention. And they'll have another insight into the same memories. And it was really intriguing to me. Yet we know that Kirk Douglas just had a 100th birthday party here.
Right.
Not too long ago. So who brought him back from the dead? How do we have this false memory? And I've gotten emails and calls and have talked to people from all around the world in person that have this same memory. And there are other aspects of this that also seem to permeate our culture, from the Berenstain to the Berenstain Bears controversy, how people remember. How do you remember it, honestly?
I remember Berenstain Bears.
Right.
Yeah.
And, but it's the Berenstain Bears.
Yeah.
Not a major difference, but it was weird enough. I just remember growing up in a Lutheran Christian school, seeing the Berenstain Bears, and of course in my limited scope thinking it was like a Jewish kids book, that it was probably one of those, because at that time there were stories and there were TV shows on Sunday morning where I grew up that were slanted towards Christian kids and then the Jewish kids. So to me it just seemed like, it was probably parables of these bears leading, whatever lives the Jewish story was telling. That was my perception. I never read the Berenstain Bears growing up, but then the Berenstain Bears controversy popped up, and I am one of them that remembers it Stein.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And that's not it. It's interesting. Now, there have been a few strange instances where these worlds have collided, and I've had people send me photographs of old VHS tapes. Okay. And the outside of the box says the Berenstain Bears, and you pull the tape out and look at the name Berenstain.
Interesting. I mean, that's weird. That's very weird indeed.
So could it have been that just from time to time we had typos and we saw things that led us to believe this? Or is there something going on? Is there an undercurrent? Is there the possibility that parallel universes are colliding and little hiccups pop in from time to time? Or are we living a lifetime that our soul leaves that life and goes to one step over to continue that life, but in a parallel universe, right? I mean, a lot of the people I've spoken to, and this was what I found to be more of the interesting aspect, the more of us that had these false memories, and in some cases, many of us had multiple false memories that lined up with each other. I started finding a common thread that a lot of these people had what we would consider near-death experiences, but not in the classic sense, not the necessarily, and then seeing the white light and hearing the hallelujah. It's not that type of near-death experience where we're floating above our bodies and come back in.
Okay.
But we were in a situation where we should not have survived. I've had multiple times of that happen in my life. So I've wondered if, the Bible tells us we're supposed to live this long, rich, fulfilled life. Mm-hmm. Maybe we do, but we do it a step at a time. And in this life, when I pulled that trigger when I was a teenage boy and wanted to commit suicide and it did not fire, maybe in that reality it did. And my consciousness took a jump to the left and then a step to the right, right? and continued on. So I carry with me some of the memories of these alternate lives that I've lived. Not like reincarnation alternate lives, but going up this progressive ladder. And maybe my soul will get to live that one full, rich life. Mm-hmm. But at each crossroads where I probably should have checked out, I've just taken a step over to the next lifetime. And my life did terminate there. Which may make sense of why there are certain times we feel overwhelming senses of depression or loss, and we can't attest it to anything? Could it be that that's because it's a reverberation from a past or an alternate world that we came from? These are just some of the theories I've been talking about for the last 5 years on our show.
Mm-hmm.
And the Mandela effect keeps picking up in popularity. More and more people having interesting memories, thoughts, and ideas. And, what's happening? Are we awakening, or are we living in kind of an alternate matrix world where things are continually changing and shifting? Well, our guest Roy Horn is here with us this evening, and we're going to talk about this. The Mandela effect, Ascension. Roy, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. And incidentally, everything that you just said is 100% correct. And everything you were surmising is really right. So I guess we can just say goodnight.
Okay. Well, thank you, Roy. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been fun.
I don't even need guests anymore, Tim. I can just come up with my own theories and follow that. So, Roy, when did you become aware of the Mandela effect in
Oh,
life?
Man, it hit me, this mess that we're in. The first of last year, 2016, I was on the internet looking at everybody was really, I saw a lot of action or whatever about the flat Earth theory. Mm-hmm. And it seemed, I kept seeing this, all of these postings mentioning the Mandela effect, and I didn't know what it was, so I just typed it in, and there I was. And it's very strange because all of the logos, and I'm sure that just about everybody by now knows what we're talking about, but the logos and all that got me. But I do remember Mandela dying. I remember 1983, but then again, I do remember 2013. But it didn't dawn on me until this happened that I said, "Wait a minute." I mean, I know when Mandela died in 2013, but I for some reason I did not put it all together. And when I started the logos and all that, then everything just started, I guess, falling back into place.
What do you mean by logos? Explain that to our listeners.
Oh, man, a Ford logo. I grew up on Fords. I'm 66 years old. I know what a Ford logo looks like. And the little cross part of the F used to look like a little banner. And now it's got a little curly Q at the end of that F. It looks like a pig's tail. That was never there. Volvo, which was a circle and said Volvo, but now coming up at what would be 1 o'clock on a face of a clock, they have an arrow coming out, and it looks like the symbol for a male. The Volkswagen logo changed. This is a funny one, a cup of soup. And you were talking about what's being called residual evidence, evidence of the other reality. Mm-hmm. And in my I live in a rural area of Arkansas, and in my local Walmart, you can look down one aisle, up on top on green, a little green a sign they make so you'll know, help you along there. It says Cup O Soup. Oh, I remember Cup O Soup, but when you go to the aisle there, it's Cup A Soup, and there never has been a Cup O Soup. And Cup O Noodles turned into Cup Noodles. I don't know what Cup Noodles is, but Walmart has.
You're blowing my mind. You're blowing it, yeah. Roy, because now I'm remembering Cup Noodles, or I mean Cup O Noodles, and that is weird.
Yeah, and Cup O Soup, but even the sign says Cup O Soup, even Walmart's sign, but the product says Cup A Soup, Cup A Soup, which doesn't even make any sense.
That's because somebody at Walmart has had that same memory, and when they printed up the marketing posters, they were going off what they had remembered in the past, too.
No, you can go to a Ford dealership and ask them about that, and they'll go, no, that doesn't look right. They don't even know. They're not even aware of it. No, that's how asleep people are. But, it wasn't just logos. It was the names of products and songs, pop culture, words in movies and famous phrases. And it's ones that everybody knows and is sure of. And they're all of a sudden their wife or their uncle or their best friend has a totally different memory than they do, and they're each positive and they're each correct, by the way.
You know, so when it comes to like movie lines and song lyrics, I give a lot of leeway to things like that because, you know, for many years people, and I think Woody Allen helped perpetuate this with "Play It Again, Sam." Right? I mean, everybody thinks of Casablanca and they think of Humphrey Bogart telling the piano player, "Play it again, Sam." That line was never uttered in the movie. He said, "You played it for her, now play it for me. Play it." And that was it. But people remember it a certain way because that's the way it was marketed or that's the way it was put out to the public for quite a long time. So I understand some false memories and the way they work.
Look, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but if you know, and that's really right, because you can go, you know, man, was this the TV show Different Strokes or DIFF apostrophe RNT Strokes? And you go, you'll think, maybe my memory's gone, but I know some things. And I know there were only 4 people in the limo when Kennedy was assassinated, not 6. In this reality, there's 6. In the reality I came from, there was a driver and Connolly was in the front.
Right.
And Jacqueline and JFK in the back. In this reality, there's a driver, a Secret Service agent, John Connolly and his wife in the middle seat, and the Kennedys in the back seat. It's a 3-seater. Now, here's the residual evidence. You can pull up a 1964, and I think it's April or May, edition of Life magazine. And in the center, one of their feature articles is about their visit to the Henry Ford Museum. And they have an exact replica of that limo because they made that limo. And it only has 2 seats. The picture in Life magazine just shows a 2-seater. But in this reality, there's a 3-seater, and that doesn't jive. So I can almost go with some of the little stuff like, everybody knows Fruit Loops. Fruit is now Froot, and Looney Tunes, Tunes is what it is here, but it's supposed to be Toons. There's so many of them that it can't just be your memory, and there's so many other people that are so adamant that what this is correct. If you're not in control of or hadn't been working on your consciousness as I have for 40-something years, you're gonna shut down and just follow the crowd. One
of the points, doing a paranormal radio show like this, I remember specifically the cover of Life magazine with the UFOs over Washington, and I remember the splash page of it. Tim remembers that exact same magazine. We've talked about this, Tim.
Yep.
And I wanted to procure that magazine and frame it because I always thought that was such an amazing cover. And for people to keep whining and bitching about, if there really are aliens, why don't they fly over Washington? Why don't they land on the grass of the White House? And I thought, look, professional photographers caught photographs of UFOs over Washington, D.C. Why is this not a bigger thing? And now, if you look that up in this reality, Marilyn Monroe is on the cover of that magazine, and the article's buried deep inside the magazine. It's still there and exists, but it's not played up the way I recall it. And it's so strange to me because I remember the iconic look when they showed it on Sightings, and they showed it of what was the Robert Stack show, Tim? Not Mysterious Ways, but it was Unsolved Mysteries. I remember those photographs of the magazine cover, and I was always transfixed by that image. And, to have these kind of false memories, it drives me crazy. There are days you walk away thinking you're crazy.
Well, a lot of people think I am.
Right.
They always have. I'm a very unusual person. I'm a professional musician, and I have been since I was 20 years old, and I'm 66 now. And I played last night, and that's why my voice is maybe a little bit weak or raspy. But when I was 20 years old, I was very fortunate that a friend of mine introduced me to a couple of guys outside of Austin. And one of those guys introduced me to peyote and invited me to come to his family's home outside of Roma, Texas, in Starr County, and that is the absolute heart of the center of peyote country. And I met his grandmother, and she told me that the line of women, her daughter, which was this guy's mother, all the way back pre-Aztec, a line of women that were Nahuatls. Nahuatl, and they still spoke that language, Nahuatl. And the Aztec language came from the Nahuatl language. But anyway, through the use of some psychotropic drugs and this little family for about 18 months, I learned some things. And I took them with me the rest of my life. It set me on fire for what it did. It taught me that there is nothing but consciousness, nothing. There's nothing out there. There's no outer space. There's nothing but consciousness. And so I started on this quest for expansion of consciousness. If that's all there is, that's all I wanted. And when this Mandela effect hit me, as strange as it all is, it just, I guess what I've been doing for 40 years and everything, I don't know if the Mandela effect made something click or if it's just my time. But when people say the veil has been lifted, that's exactly what happened. And I spent about 5 days in a fifth dimensional state. And then for about 2 months, I'd slide back and forth, and I'd slide into different realities. And then I settled in this cosmic blend I'm in now.
Okay.
But that's why the Mandela effect was so important. And what happened during these experiences, I've learned a lot about what's happened to me since I was 20 years old. That's why I told that story to begin with, is because I've been receiving instruction on man, this is weird because this is all new to me too. And not the part I've been doing dream work and stuff, but I've been receiving instructions in the dream world or dream state, but I could not process it or bring it back to this reality or this side. But I was still getting instructions, and things happen in my life now that I know why it happened, and it's very odd. But in the state that you see all your lives, and you were true about if you come to a stop sign and take a left, there is another valid reality that went right. It is as valid as this reality because there's nothing but consciousness. And your conscious runs through these millions and millions of lifetime faster than the speed of light. So it is a fact that when you die, your consciousness you're not even aware, but there is a consequence of that life that you lived, and that is to remove this thing that's in your head, which is not real, which is causing all of this. Anyway, don't let me go too far down these rabbit holes.
No, I love it. That's what this is about. I mean, we're not here to just exchange pleasantries. We want to look into these possible realms of belief and consciousness. Now, there's quite a bit being said now, and maybe you're more familiar with this than I am, that this has also affected the Bible. Now,
oh my gosh,
what can you tell me about that? Because I know, first of all, the Bible has been translated and retranslated into many different versions and dialects, and now they're even doing like an urban. Have you heard about this, Tim? They're doing like an urban Bible.
No,
they're making
really?
it like in a happen, very, just very weird, but trying to use contemporary conversational tone to the book.
Huh.
So there's many different variations and varieties of this. So how do we know that we're just not recalling it one way? I mean, you go look at the King James book is going to look completely different than the NIV and some of the others. What do you come up with?
Well, that's the deal, and the only interpretation attacked is, well, it has bled over to the NIV and New King James and English Standard Version and RSV, but the main attack has been on the King James Bible. Mm-hmm. And that's what really set me. The last what we have here in front of us is simply a belief system, and it's one that's been programmed, and for thousands of years this moment has been planned for, and that's what this Mandela effect's all about. It is. And I have when it happened to the Bible, it just blew my mind. And the first thing I saw in the Bible was wineskins, because in Matthew, I taught advanced Bible for over 20 years, and to adults, and every week. And I was very, very active in a church, and I did a Wednesday night Bible study every Wednesday night for a year and a half, Southern Baptist Church, while we were looking for another preacher. But I'm very familiar with the Bible all my life, and the only way that you can actually teach the Bible is to have a King James Version and a Strong's Concordance, because the Strong's Concordance takes every word in the original 1611 King James and translates it for you. So the first half of the concordance is Hebrew or Chaldean, and the second half is Aramaic, actually, or Greek. Is actually Greek. So you have to have that so you can break down each word. And I know these verses very, very well. And when it says in the Bible in Matthew, don't put new wine into old wineskins. And see, there's a meaning there. And this is this is at the Sermon of the Mount, and you got to look at the context and who Jesus is talking to in front of him. And all of a sudden it says, don't put new wine into old bottles. And I'm thinking, how many of these people are carrying around bottles, Jesus? This is not right. And it never said bottles. Bottles is not right. You pick up the New King James, it'll say wineskins. NIV will say, all of them will say wineskins except the original 1611. So we're not talking about translations. All of this affects the 1611 Bible. And it's what's so wild. Every Bible changed instantaneously. Your granddaddy's family tree Bible on the coffee table has changed. And this is what all the rest of it, the logos, and that was something. But, we hadn't even talked about geography and the human body, and it's just bizarre, and the whole location of our solar system now, and everything's so bizarre. But you could see the agenda by the changes in the Bible. All the rest of them, I can't see the agenda in logos, but in the Bible, I could very see it, because the message is gone. The message about new wine is, okay, you've accepted Christ and baptized or whatever. You are a new born. And so don't put this new spirit into that old body. In other words, don't go back to these human fleshly habits and stuff that you have. It makes no sense with a bottle. It just makes no sense as it does with wineskins, because those wineskins would burst if they put this new wine, which would continue to ferment and grow out. The old wineskins would just burst. Could not handle the new spirit. Those changes have to be made in your life. But then all of a sudden, in Numbers, instead of saying, I want the firstborn that breaketh open, the first maleborn that breaketh open the womb, every time it says breaketh open the womb in the Old Testament now, it says breaketh open the matrix. Now, I know that's not right. Misspellings, every time, let's see. Besides misspelling, everybody knows this. I'm a musician, and there's a pretty famous song out by a country artist, and it's faith, hope, and love is all there is, and of these, the greatest is love. Mm-hmm. Well, every time you see that in the Bible now, it's changed to cherish. Faith, hope, and cherish. Love's been removed. All kinds of words are misspelled. All kinds of new added. You see planes, pilots, unicorns. all kind. God says now that, and I believe it's Exodus. I don't have a book in front of me because I can't pick it up anymore. But if I remember right, it was 34:14, and where God's saying that you should have no other gods before me because I'm a jealous God. Well, now it says you should have no other gods before me, for I am called jealous with a capital J, comma, I am a jealous God. For I am called, capital J, jealous. And that just didn't make any sense to me. It's very nefarious when you now Jesus says, bring mine enemies and shown them before me is what it used to say. Now it says, and slay them before me. In the Bible now, in the Old Testament, God tells the nation of Israel, come before me and I'll make this big feast, for I know how you lusteth after flesh and blood. And that's not sheep flesh. How you lusteth after flesh and blood, come to my sacrifice for you, and get your fill of it. It says this in that manner 7 or 8 times in the Bible now, where it's okay to lusteth after flesh and blood. This is very weird, very weird.
All right. Well, if this is going on, and we know that there's sometimes going to be blending of these alternate realities or parallel universes, have you found something that you believe you can attribute this hiccup in the Matrix to? Have you stumbled upon a key to this aspect yet?
Well, I do. And what I'm going to tell you is this: I'm not. Anything that I say is my personal experience and my personal truth. There's no right or wrong to any of this, so I can't say this is exactly what you have to do or whatever, but this is what's been shown to me. When I say shown, it's the way that I receive information totally changed with the Mandela effect, and I no longer receive it filtered through the brain. It's directly to the heart now, and it's what you would call intuitive knowledge. And it's much, much different than processing rationally knowledge that we have today. And I've been receiving this for a long time and didn't know it till the Mandela effect and put me into an altered state in which I started learning how to access it and what it is. This all goes back thousands and thousands of years, and they, when I say they, I'm talking about what I call, or I've been told, are the farmers. But for thousands of years, shaman and all have been telling the world about this, and it's in a lot of Gnostic literature. I think I haven't read up on much of that, but the Gnostics call them the archons. I call them the farmers. Christians call them demons. The Muslim call them the jinn. The Native Mesoamerican Indians call them the flyers. They've been around as long as we have. And they actually are, they're just energetic beings, but they're inorganic, because they don't have souls. It's very difficult because we are so attached to them and don't know it. All the literature that burnt in the Alexandria library, the final burning, which it burned 3 times, but finally Pope Theophilus did away with all of it, and that had all of this knowledge that the world needed, but the Catholic Church was trying to keep it away from everybody. And what happened with you might have heard of the Nag Hammadi library that was dug up in Egypt in 1948. Mm-hmm. And so this Gnostic thing came back. But actually, they're pretty close to it. But everybody, every religion, they all hint toward this. But these entities, they are not creative or anything at all. They actually live off of emotions and vibrations of self-aware beings. And I'm not sure if this is an unusual thing or if it happens a whole lot. But that's what's happening in this realm that we live in. And to get there, because it's very difficult for people to understand, but you have to start from the aspect that there is nothing out there. People are arguing about the globe, and you don't have NASA's a lie. You can't measure it, and we don't know what it is.
You can't measure what?
The globe, the Earth. I mean, you have to go by what you're told. And these are beliefs that people say, well, everybody knows the Earth's round. But actually, it is those beliefs that create what's in front of you, which is a fiction that is a fictional realm within an electromagnetic environment. That's exactly what you're looking at, a fictional realm within an electromagnetic environment.
So you're talking about Neo and the Matrix here.
Yes, pretty much.
All right, we need to take a quick break. Roy Horn, our guest, as we continue talking about the Mandela effect, Ascension. Is science dabbling in this? Have they torn open the fabric of time and space and perhaps causing these hiccups, these skips in the record? What about CERN? Have they had a hand in this? We'll discuss that and more. But make sure that you do us a favor. Go check out Amazon.com, which we all know is the #1 shopping center on the planet. It's the best way to get your stuff. And did you know now you can help our show simply by visiting podcast1.com, click on the Killer Deals link, then go find the Beyond the Darkness tab. Once you're there, you'll find all of our advertisers. Make sure you click on the link that associates with your country and area for Amazon. And whenever you place your orders, if you can go through that link, you could bookmark it to make it easier to get to so you don't have to go through all these jumps and hoops anymore. But every time you place an order for any item off of Amazon.com, little or large, a small percentage of that's going to go to help our show and keep us afloat, and it costs you absolutely nothing. So if you could do that, it would be a great help to Tim, myself, and Beyond the Darkness to keep us alive and going for many, many years. All right, so go do that and get a copy of the book, The Mandela Effect, Ascension, from our guest, Roy Horn. We'll be back. We've got more right after this. Dave, that's Tim. And tomorrow, Tim, we're going to take a look at a very controversial subject. Ouija. People either love it or hate it. I guess there's people like me that just don't care either way, right? It is what it is. But I think it's funny, man. If you've ever seen, like they're advertising, there's Ouija board tablecloths. Mm-hmm. You can do Ouija board jewelry. And some people, their initial reaction to me is so goofy. It's, oh no, I wouldn't touch. I'd never bring that tablecloth into my home. Just by the image itself, it causes such fear. Why are people so affected and impacted by a board game? It's not just a board game, Dave. It's opening the 7th layer of hell. And maybe there's something to that. Maybe that's part of what the Mandela effect is. All these people poking and prodding the unknown. Maybe they are causing the hiccups in the system, Tim.
Maybe.
I don't know. We're going to talk with Ouija board historian Bob Murch, who's going to share some of the creepiest stories he's collected over the years. New stories to our audience regarding the Ouija, and some that date back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, Tim, and some very strange accounts. Then we're going to talk with Dr. Michael Shermer from Skeptic Magazine to get a different perspective on this. He is one of the most intelligent men I've ever met, and a fascinating guy, and can make learning fun, Tim. Learning can be fun.
It can be?
Yeah, we're going to find out tomorrow about some of the psychological aspects of Ouija. How does it work? How do we trick our minds, or is there something more to it? We'll talk to our guest. He always surprises me. Maybe he's got some new insights. Maybe he is also realizing that sometimes there's more than meets the eye, even in the science community. So we'll talk about that on tomorrow's show. But right now, Roy Horn is our guest. The Mandela Effect, Ascension, is the name of his book, and we're discussing the strange phenomena known as the Mandela Effect. Listen, Roy, we are constantly pushing the envelope and the limits of capabilities. We're exploding nuclear weapons on our ground, in our air, and in our water. We are messing with CERN, with the accelerator. Are we causing some of these tears in the fabric of reality? Are we causing some of these false memories because we're creating a chasm where false energy or false memories, maybe the Akashic records of an alternate universe, is permeating into our realm now?
Well, that the false memories, it is being created, but and it is being created by artificial intelligence. Now this is one thing that if I assume something, I will tell you, but I'm so close to really being 100% on that because I've seen it, but I'm not really positive if that is when you view your lifelines and you stand in front of your soul and stand in front of the 10th dimension, or I mean the 11th dimension, which is the field of infinite field of probabilities, what we call source. You see how all of life force is the mechanics of God, how it goes forth, what it does, every thought, every life, how it returns to the Akashic records. Mm-hmm. Then there's a holding area where this personality, this part of the brain we're going to talk about in a minute, has to be burned out. And then that might not have been a good word because it can be loved out. And then you merge with your soul. And the 6th dimension is when all souls merge, and I don't have any information past that. But when you can see the field that we of infinite probability we know of as source and follow the timelines, I was made aware while I was watching those, which are collapsing. My timelines are collapsing at a very fast rate. But this other timeline, the timeline we're in, doesn't come from or return to source. And it doesn't return to anything. I just see a one-way thing from a darkness. Let's put it that way. I mean, I'd love to sit here and tell you it's some big monolith or this or that, but it's just dark. I don't know what it is. But the life force that you see in these lives is different. In this lifeline, we're cubed. In my natural lifelines, it's just a flow of energy. These are cubes with little like sparks between them. Well, there's a space, and there's a whole lot of area around it that's dark, where the other, the real lifelines there's no darkness at all. Very wild. What has happened is this. This is a time of ascension. The sun, and I'm talking of consciousness here. I'm not an astrophysicist, but I know that there are cycles of the sun. But the sun goes through 24-year cycles, and it goes through 1,000 of those to make a full cycle. Now, those years, that's not exact because we have a crazy calendar where we have to add a day every 4 years. But it's close to that. At the end of that 1,000 24-year cycles, that last cycle, there's a change of consciousness. That's, believe it or not, that's what this is. And we're somewhere in that 24-year cycle, and I think we're pretty close to the end of it. Because when the new consciousness comes in, the veil lifts, and belief systems are destroyed because that's all that people have for their reality. And it's a way to evolve our conscious. And this time we're supposed to move up to be human beings. This that we're living in is the animal world. It actually belongs to karma and to animals. And we're going to move up into the energetic world of human beings. Now, if that happened naturally as it was supposed to, the farmers would not have been here for as long as they've been here as long as mankind. And I don't know how they came and all that, but I do know that we are a free will human experiment in some realm of consciousness. There is no place. It's just realms of consciousness. People say they came from Venus. There is a Venus, but it's not a planet or a place. It is a realm of consciousness. And so these whatever they are. I call them farmers, but a lot of people now are starting to call them archons. And because of the Gnostic writings, they manipulate human beings. This is the story of Adam and Eve, the serpent, and the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The world of duality is given to you by these beings. You can, if you're really in the Bible, you can call them fallen angels. It doesn't matter, but they don't have any souls. Then once they take over the mind, the Adam and Eve story is not about self-awareness. They were aware. It's about the formation of the ego. And once that ego's formed, what in my teachings is called the little soul, once that ego's formed, they are in control because of the nature of man, and that's what the Cain and Abel story is all about. So they've controlled man's minds for a long time. It's what everything, the Catholic Church, this mind that we have was grown for this time. And it was, I can tell you when, it was when in 400 and something, when the Romans pulled out of Britain because Rome fell and they couldn't defend all those outer areas. Well, history says that the Angles and the Saxons invaded, the barbarians came in and took over, but there's no evidence of that at all. None at all. And all historians will tell you that. They'll just say it just seems like a natural progression, but because a brand new mind emerged that they can't account for, and that's the mind that you and I are communicating with right now.
But you brought up a key word. You brought up the fact of historians. They took a look at the history, the archaeological history, the written and oral versions of history, the pictograph versions, and that's where they came up with these stories. Where does Roy Horn get this information?
That's very strange. When I hit into that, do what?
No, go ahead. I'm just listening to you.
When I spent all my life, and I did peyote for about 18 months while I was learning some stuff. But then I have never done it again. That was 40-something years ago, 1972. But it set me on a course of shutting down my internal dialogue, which is creating everything. And that opens up all this other stuff that comes to you. And then through all of that, you start learning that you need personal energy or personal power to overcome these things and what we call the tonal, or this reality, and you can gain access to that extra energy through dreaming techniques. And so I adopted these Toltec dreaming techniques. And what I didn't know and could not bring back to place here was that I was being taught. And when I went into the fifth dimension or whatever, I started right after that. And since that, I've always been able to achieve lucid dreaming, but I was not able to do what you're supposed to do in the practice I was following, which is in order to decrease the power and control that this reality has on you, you create a whole separate reality. And that separate reality you create, and you actually create an energetic body in your dream state. And once you do that all that energy transfers over to your physical body, or this dimension, third dimensional deal, and you're able to see the energetic world around you instead of just what everybody else is processing. But during that times, and I found out that in my dream states, I've been taught these things, and then in my dream state, my energetic body was born, basically, but I'd had it all this time. I just wasn't aware of it. And then all this information that has been given to me for 40 years through a dream state is starting to be processed, and it can only be processed as I release certain belief systems.
Well, you talk about the fact that you've kind of expanded your consciousness. and it's been the main focus of your life.
Right.
Well, if there is this effect that you're able to involve yourself in that revolves around space and time, and this is kind of the focal point of your writings. At the beginning, you kind of described yourself, and you're tired and you're worn out from performing. And if you're truly not the form that you are, and you're more of this conscious survivor, shouldn't you have control over the matrixed physical form that you have?
Well, that's a misconception. It's true, but like a small amount of work will do a tremendous amount of consciousness expansion, but the person's physical body and what they're going through and everything, you and I won't be able to tell that. This is not something, what you're looking at is a belief system. I believe that you would show this type of a reaction or what results if that's what you were doing. But people are expanding their consciousness even when they don't know it, and a lot of it is happening in dreams and stuff. But what I was doing, that it was working on another level. On this level, it was working also exactly by what you said, because you see the society, everybody holds you with their belief system. The first thing that a human being does is fears being not just rejected, but deserted and left alone. That's why babies cry for their little mothers or whatever, and then we learn to manipulate that. But this mind is a fearful mind, and it's not our mind. So here's the deal: if you don't even listen to anything I say, this is one thing that I hope maybe 40 years from now you'll still be thinking about. But the person talking in your head thinks he's you, and you think you're the person talking in your head, and neither one of you are right. And so the effects that I'm having on the person talking in my head might look like to society I ain't got my everything together, because that's who I'm attacking. I don't know how else to explain it. That talking in your head, that incessant internal dialogue, is not you. It is the farmers. They created this mind for this. All the belief system, everything from schools to, everything was for this and to have the public asleep. Those that have worked on their egos are getting rid of that person over there.
But if these are such enlightened beings, why bother playing such stupid games? Why?
They're not enlightened beings. And
if they have this ability and power, it seems like they're enlightened much higher than we are.
Well, they're not. They're very jealous of you. You just don't realize how much light and how much you actually have. And these are very, very subordinate beings compared to a human being. And but we're limited because of what they've trained us to be. You see, they couldn't control us if we hadn't been downloaded with this reality and our rationality and the whole 9 yards. And it's for them. But the deal, before I get way off that, is with this ascension, and we're supposed to move up. The farmers can't have that because they farm us. They live off of this, our emotions and our self-awareness. And so what happens when you die, they set up it's a trick. Everybody, you don't go to the light. If you go to the light, they're going to trick you into being reincarnated, and there you go again. And that's their little deal, and that little cycle. When people wake up, when the veil is lifted for lots and lots of people, and a veil is slowly dissolving for a lot of people, then their game's over. So with the ascension and this moving up that all the ancients knew about, they put in place with mankind. They created this mind to be able to control it. They didn't put this in a Native American Indian. They built this mind and have affected the whole world with it. And at this time, by controlling, that's who controls all the bloodlines, the royal bloodlines of the Illuminati. They're all controlled by the farmers, who I assume are controlled by something else. I don't know. but they have put themselves in those brains, so to speak, and have genetically run these bloodlines to form these ruling classes. And so they revealed the technology to make happen what we have right now to mankind, but they didn't have any way to produce it or pay for it. And that's what NASA was all about. NASA was a fraud. That's why. Now, this is what I believe. I don't know this, but I kind of put together it's why they shot Kennedy. There's no space. There's nowhere to go. But they had to create all of this technology, which is on the quantum level, and CERN is involved. CERN was where they started, as far as we know, in the 50s. Understand, they're 50 years ahead of us that we'll never know. But that's what all that NASA program was, all this money to create all of this technology to actually to be able to manipulate the fabric of reality. And that's what
why do
doing.
you come back to this form then? If
no, I don't have a choice to do that. I'm not. See, that is the deal.
Well, I thought we're all given free will. Isn't that the key, the kind of juxtapoint to this entire thing is that we have free will?
Oh, when you're talking about, come back to being reborn, you mean? Why do we do it?
No, why do you're ascended, you're able to kind of open your consciousness to this. What is it that, if you have this ability, why are we not able to leave this consciousness or alter in massive ways our paradigm? If we, once you've turned that key and you realize that you have that key and that what is you and what you think is you, the voices in your mind are not you, and you're able to separate that, it would seem that you're ascending and you are in control.
Well, you are at that point for sure, but that does not mean that you don't live out a human body life. There are tales of those that take definitive walks or whatever, but everything's done by an agreement. There's nothing done to a soul that's not done by agreement. You have people that read codes a lot, and they're really heavy into Illuminati, and they'll say that movies and advertisements, and how they. I mean, that's a really crazy path, because I can see how you could just never get off that path. But anyway, and they say that the Illuminati, they leave these codes because it's part of their code. But that's not the truth. The truth of the matter is they're being controlled by these farmers or whatever they are, and they have to follow a cosmic natural law. And we are in a realm of a free will. And this is an experiment, the human experiment in free will. Now, these farmers, I don't know if they're invited in, let in, or whatever, but nothing can happen without you being told about it in an agreement. And that's what all that code's about. If you're not paying you're smart enough to know it immediately, you've just been dumbed down. That is not the fault of the cosmic universe. There is no.
But what sense is that we would make a choice, to make a choice, and then choose to hide that that's our life path, and that's, I don't know. That's where I start having problems with the whole. This is a decision, a contractual obligation that we made prior to coming back here. Is that why would we do that, knowing that we have no control over it once we're here?
Well, you don't know that. It's all, you don't remember nothing. That it's the way I see it, and I don't know this, but I don't know the step from the holding area, but I do know that the light's a trap, and I assume that you're just tricked into being, you're shown everything, man, you need to do this all over and blah, blah, blah. But you can just say no. The Buddhists are kind of writing all these, I don't remember, 166,000 lives, but you're living in millions of lifelines all at one time, and that's your total human experience. That is, when the Bible says appointed to man to live and die once, that once is you, but it's going to be done a couple of million times or more But
no wonder I'm always so damn tired. I'm living a million lives at once.
Well, it is crazy, and with this, if there wasn't the natural progression with the Great Spirit, it's just an all consciousness. Everything's consciousness, and that is the great consciousness. And I don't know how far down the line that goes,
Well, if people want to start tapping into this consciousness so that they feel that they have more control and an understanding, what are some? We've got about 6 minutes left together. What are some of the best ways to start doing that?
Well, and it's very hard, and I'm not a teacher. But I can tell you what I did in my reality. I kicked down the wall, and I didn't realize I was being helped on another plane. But here's the big thing: start to really understand, as far as your mind, when you are talking and when you are listening. And there's a big, big difference. Anything that's hateful, spiteful, all the bad, that's not you. Take heart, that is not you, and you can escape that. So you find your heart in those little bitty pieces of your mind that you know are you, and you focus on that, and you start, you can chant or whatever. I mean, people do all kinds of different things, meditate. What you have to do is start paying attention to what's going through your head, and then you'll start seeing how nobody's expanding their consciousness. I don't want to mean nobody, but that's not what's happening in American churches or whatever. And it's just a dumbing down process. And you'll start hitting this part where you fear, well, what are going to people think about me if I walk out of church or blah, blah, blah. But there is no fear in the heart. So that fear and that conspiracy fear thing or whatever is not you. There is no fear. And so get rid of that. And it's beliefs. Very quickly, when the information, and that's all of this is just information, and quantum mechanics has told us all this, but when information comes through our soul and blasted to us, it goes through what I call a stained glass window now. And that light hits that window, and on your hardwood floor you'll see a pattern. And it's not supposed to be a pattern there. Each of those stained glasses is a belief that you've been told that is true and have accepted and lived your life by. And all of it's wrong. And it affects all of that information. So when it goes through all that stained glass, the projection is this messed up earth and world that we're living in. So you have to kick out all that stained glass. It's a booger because it wants to come back. And once you start kicking it out, removing your belief systems, and I mean remove them, then your heart starts growing and the little monster in your head starts shutting up. And once that starts happening, you will start being lifted. If everything was right, all of mankind, the veil would be slowly lifting for all of mankind, and we would move up. But this is a point of decision, and man can choose that, or he can choose the religion of technocracy and transhumanism, because that's where we're being led with artificial intelligence, with Google. Did you know that they summoned they went before a judge here in Arkansas a month ago, the state attorney did, and put a plea before the judge to write a summon for an Alexa Amazon smart speaker that was in a room when a murder was committed. They want to call in the smart speaker as a virtual witness. Mm-hmm. Now, the speaker itself does not. Amazon's very clear about this and being very cooperative. And I heard you mention them, and my book is for sale there also. They're a very good company. There's no information on the speaker, but there is somewhere in a computer. But Amazon's saying we're not. This had never happened. They're not doing anything right now by providing anything, and I don't know if they've ever thought that out, but that's where we're at. That's the society we live in. You can keep going down that road, or you can just say enough's enough. They don't want you to go down that road. They want you to go down the technocracy road, and they're forcing you more and more and more, and it's faster and faster and faster. And all of the Mandela effect is to keep you confused. They did the Bible because I think they misjudged the Christians. I think they thought it would split the church, but they didn't realize that most Christians are asleep. I'm a Christian, I can say that. Most Christians are asleep and don't read the King James Bible anymore anyway. And so they thought, well, that didn't work. You know, they thought it'd be a big uproar. And there will be whenever the preachers who are so legalistically trained that they think that it's the infallible word of God that can't be changed, even when you show them that when Acts chapter 12, when Herod, seeing that it pleased the Jews that he put James, the half-brother of John, to the sword, and it being the time of unleavened bread, instructed a Roman quaternion to take Peter and hold him in jail until after they, the Jews, had celebrated Easter. Now, that's what it says in the King James Bible now, chapter 12 of Acts. The Jews, he had to wait till the Jews celebrated Easter instead of Passover. It'll say Passover in every Bible in the world except every King James Bible now. And so, but the Christians aren't aware. As soon as one pastor finally steps up, I saw one, he stepped up and he said, "Who lies with the lamb?" There, the whole congregation said, "Well, the lion does." He said, "No. I preached that for 40 years, and looky here, it says the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, not the Lion of Judah lying down with the Lamb of God, the finished product of his kingdom. It would be the wolf, who we all know has snuck in and lies with." And so this preacher said, "I went back in 40 years of notes. I've always preached the lion ways of the lamb, but looky there, it says wolf, and I've been wrong for 40 years because it's right here in front of us, and that can't be changed." And when one of them finally admits it, and the congregations will start splitting, and somebody will come up with a pre-Mandela effect 1611 King James Bible, and you'll have pre-Mandela Congregational Baptist Church or whatever, or who knows what other kind of cult. And so I don't have that belief system. I'm a Christian, but I don't have the Christian belief system. I believe in Christ consciousness. And this is the second coming of that consciousness to me, and that's what's happening, this descending of a new consciousness.
Well, we've got the information for Roy up on the site, so if you go to podcast1.com and look on tonight's podcast, you'll see the link to Roy, and you can check out his book, The Mandela Effect, Ascension. We'll be back tomorrow when we delve deeper into the realm of the paranormal and we research the haunting history of Ouija. We'll do that here on the best in paranormal talk radio. I'm Dave, that's Tim, and this is Beyond the Darkness.